Thanks so much for being here, everybody. I'm of course joined by our governor, Jay Inslee, who will be sharing some remarks shortly. It's a real honor, of course, to have the governor here for this announcement. So thanks, Governor. We know you're busy. To my right is Bill Sherman. He's an assistant attorney general in our office. He's also the lead attorney in our office for our Council for Environmental Protection. The governor and I will speak. Then we'll take questions from folks here in the room. Then we'll turn to folks on the phone. Before we wrap up. So we're here today to talk about PCBs, one of the most pervasive pollutants in history, and why it's time to hold the sole U.S. manufacturer of PCBs accountable for the significant harm they have caused to our state. A few minutes ago, my team filed a lawsuit in King County Superior Court against Monsanto to force them to pay for the environmental damage caused by PCBs. Monsanto produced PCBs for decades while hiding what they knew about the toxic chemicals' harm to human health and the environment. Monsanto produced these dangerous chemicals despite knowing about their dangers. They knew. They concealed that information from the public. Monsanto focused on reaping profits at the expense of our environment and the health of our people. We are suing for damages to our natural resources, costs to remediate PCB contamination, and cost to prevent future PCB contamination in Washington. Monsanto must be held accountable. We expect their responsibility to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more. PCBs are in every waterway in the state. They do not degrade easily and are found throughout the food chain, from bottom fish to humans. Miles of our waterways, from Lake Washington to the Columbia and Wenatchee rivers, are now subject to do not consume fish advisories due to PC contamination. I think we have a map or two here that shows the extensive amount of contamination we have from PCBs. Exposure from PCBs is associated with cancer, as well as adverse effects on the immune, reproductive, and nervous systems. These dangerous and pervasive chemicals were manufactured in the United States by just one company, Monsanto. Today, we're faced with a massive, multifaceted cleanup effort. Cleaning up PCBs has already cost the state tens of millions of dollars, and significant work remains. But the harm that PCB pollution has inflicted on Washington's integral natural resources is worth even more. Monsanto manufactured PCBs in the United States from 1935 until 1979. In 1979 is when Congress banned their manufacture with the passage of the Toxic Substances Control Act. Monsanto produced and marketed PCBs even though they knew of their danger to humans and the environment. In fact, they knew as early as the 1930s that PCBs were toxic to humans. An internal Monsanto memo from 1937 warned of, quote, systemic toxic effects, end quote, from prolonged exposures to PCB vapors. By the late 60s, Monsanto privately cited internally evidence of global PCB contamination, but concealed that information from the public. Why? They answered that question themselves. In a 1969 internal Monsanto report, they wrote, quote, there is too much customer market need and selfishly, too much Monsanto profit to go out. Monsanto continued to produce PCBs for another 10 years after that report, until they were banned by Congress. Unfortunately, the banning of PCBs did not make them go away, and the financial cost of cleaning them up is increasing. We expect this to be a long, complex legal fight. Much like former Attorney General Chris Gregoire did in her successful battle against big tobacco, we're hiring specialized law firms to assist in holding Monsanto accountable. They will work under the direction of Mr. Bill Sherman, who's here today. These outside firms, Barron & Budd and Gomez Trial Attorneys, are handling similar cases from cities who have filed lawsuits against Monsanto. Washington State, however, is the first state in the country to initiate litigation against Monsanto. Just a final thought, the governor is a fifth generation Washingtonian, I believe. I'm a relative newcomer in my family. We're fourth generation Washingtonians, I am. But the governor and I know that the identity of our state is in large measure the natural beauty of this great state and the wonderful natural resources that we have. And we take our responsibility seriously to protect those resources and that natural beauty. My ancestors came out to the state in the 19th century. When they came to what was then an obviously very remote territory before statehood, I believe, they went to a particularly remote part of the state. They actually settled near what's now Marble Mount, up along the Skagit River. And that property that they homestead in has been given to the state several decades ago by the family. It's a beautiful place. I've driven by it. And that river, the Skagit River, which my family obviously must have depended on to a great degree in the 19th century as they homesteaded here, is now contaminated by PCBs, as are the fish in the Skagit River and waterways throughout our state. That makes me mad. That makes me mad. And Monsanto needs to be held accountable for what they've done to our state. And I'm determined to make sure we accomplish that goal. Again, I appreciate very much the governor being here, and we'll turn to him for his remarks.
First off, I want to thank the Attorney General for watching out for the health of Washingtonians in so many different ways. And this lawsuit is about watching out for the health of Washingtonians from this omnipresent and horrifically toxic material. It's hard to overstate the legacy in our state of PCB contamination and around the world. It's everywhere we look. It's in our food, our fish, and our own bodies. The amount of PCBs in the southern resident orcas is among the highest recorded in any animals on the planet because this product is toxic, it is persistent, and it is bioaccumulative. And it calls for accountability. And accountability starts with this suit. This company needs to be held responsible for the damage that it has caused the Evergreen State. And the Evergreen State standing up on its hind feet and is going to ask for an appropriate level of accountability in this case. Despite knowing the dangers of the mounting problems, the evidence has been uncovered by the Attorney General that Monsanto continued producing PCBs that created this burden that continues to exist for multiple generations in our state. For too long, the company escaped responsibility for the costs, the enormous costs of the cleanup of this material. And they've left the state, counties, cities, private entities to foot the bill. It's a huge tab, and it continues to increase. This is an ongoing wound to the state of Washington. So today, I appreciate the Attorney General's leadership in this regard. I am here today to support his efforts, and the governor has come today because of the enormous cost to the entire state of Washington, and because the importance of this accountability measure. I have been involved working with the legislature to try to decrease the amount of toxic material that enters the environment. And this suit is an accountability strategy. There are many ways to reduce toxicity, but one of them is to make sure that there's responsibility and accountability for those who are responsible for pollution. And that's what this action is about. So again, to thank for Bob and his team. I know there are many good people in the Attorney General's office, and I know you're going to be working hard. Don't be daunted. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, Governor. And it's really a pleasure for me as the Attorney General to have a governor who's not just a state but a national leader on issues related to the environment and has such a deep knowledge and awareness of these issues. And it's an honor to have you here again today, Governor. So with that, again, I'm joined for those on the phone. Bill Sherman, you may hear his voice as well in answering questions. We'll do our best for the folks on the phone I'll try to repeat the question I hear from inside the room for the folks on the phone, and then I'll make sure we try to identify our voices as we answer the questions. Let's start off with any questions we have from folks in the room. Yes, go right ahead.
So if we have these internal memos from Monsanto going back a long time, we've known a long time about the dangers that these PCB pose. Why is this such a complex, why are you expecting such a complex legal fight, and why has it taken it so long for a state to sue Monsanto over this?
Sure, I'll start. Bill, feel free to add anything you might want to add to it. So I anticipate a lengthy litigation, frankly, because Monsanto will have resources to fight a lengthy battle. In similar respects to how the tobacco fight was for this state and other states that eventually joined that fight. In the public statements I've seen from Monsanto in light of similar lawsuits filed by cities, I think they've made it clear that they intend to fight hard in the courts, and I expect a similar response to the filing of this litigation. The wheels of justice sometimes move slowly, right? As the nature of our judicial system, But the fact that that it will be a lengthy fight, we're prepared for that, and believe we'll have the resources.
Have you spoken with other states, and do you expect other states to join on?
I have not spoken directly with other state AGs. That said, the team has had conversations with some other states. I won't get into details of what those are, but it's fair to say there are other states that are aware of the action that we're taking, and I suspect I'll be in communication with more AGs after today's announcement.
Sir, can you please lay out for us the theory of the case, whether it's similar in terms of its statutory underpinnings to the city's case, and also do you anticipate that this might be removed to district court, and if so, could it be a multi-district litigation that's all put together, because this is not going to be the end of it?
Why don't you just repeat the question and go forward, yeah.
So the question, if I got it correctly, was what's the theory of the case, what's the nature of the claims in the case, and do we expect the case to possibly be removed to federal court or to a multi-district litigation? Is that right?
Exactly, sir.
So the theory of the case really are several. One of the claims is a claim for nuisance. The claim that Monsanto and the other defendants in the case have taken actions that harm us all, that harm our water and our environment. Second claim is products liability for defective design. The third claim is products liability for failure to warn, which speaks for itself. The next claim is one for negligence, that Monsanto should have known and should have acted in a better way. A fifth claim is what's called equitable indemnity, which means that funds that the state has already expended for cleanup, we're owed back for Monsanto's share. We are owed back for Monsanto's share of responsibility for what we've spent. And finally, trespass, which is that the state owns lands, and Monsanto has made a product that they knew would end up on those lands and harm those lands. So those are the various types of legal claims.
Is that theory quite similar to the other cases that were filed in regards to cities around the country?
So there have been 8 cities that have filed lawsuits against Monsanto related to PCB contamination. Some of our claims are a little bit different. Largely, our claim is different because the state has a unique position to defend the natural resources of the entire state. We stand as a trustee for public resources. And so the state will be seeking not only cleanup costs, but also what's called natural resource damages for the harm to fish, water, to our natural environment that the governor and the attorney general talked about before.
And that's different from the cities, sir?
That is different from the cities.
Okay.
Your second question was about whether we would expect this case to be removed to federal court. For legal reasons dealing with how federal court jurisdiction works, we don't expect that to be the case. The cities have filed in federal court because of what's called diversity jurisdiction, the idea that they are suing a defendant that is a citizen of another state. Monsanto is headquartered in Missouri and incorporated elsewhere. A state, for the purposes of diversity jurisdiction, a state is not a citizen of a state. And so for that technical legal reason, we don't expect to be removed to federal court.
The other cities are Spokane, Seattle, Portland, where else?
Oakland, Berkeley, San Jose. I'm sorry, for those folks who are on the phone, the question was, what are the other cities that have filed lawsuits against Monsanto, Pharmacia, and Solutia related to PCB contamination? They're the city of Seattle, the city of Spokane, Portland, Oakland, Berkeley, San Jose, Long Beach, and both the city of San Diego and the port of San Diego.
How about turn to folks on the phone? That was Bill Sherman answering those last 2 questions. Anyone on the phone? And Peter, this is ready for folks to just jump in. If anyone on the phone wants to jump in, feel free to jump in with the question. Just you can identify yourself, that'd be great.
Jerry Cornfield from the Everett Herald. I just wondered if you could elaborate a moment. Does this lawsuit require you to specifically identify harm to the natural resources or individuals? I mean, do you have to demonstrate that something has occurred and you tie it directly to Monsanto's, the PCP, or not?
This is Bill Sherman from the Attorney General's office. In every lawsuit, you do need to identify harm if you're going to be claiming damages for that harm, and so we do expect to prove and to be able to prove that harm to the natural resources in the state of Washington, as well as harm in the form of cleanup costs. We expect to be able to prove both of those things.
you don't, in the suit that's filed today, you don't identify specific instances, or can you tell us right now a specific instance of where the use of PCBs and harm has occurred?
We do. So you'll see that the actual complaint that was filed in King County Superior Court today names a lengthy list of Washington State water bodies. The graphics that those of you who are here in the room can see and that we'll make available on the web also demonstrate hundreds of specific sites that are contaminated by Monsanto's PCBs and hundreds of water bodies that are impaired because of Monsanto's PCBs. And so we do expect to be able to prove specifically which water bodies and which contaminated sites have been harmed for those reasons.
Anyone else on the
This is
phone?
Jim Camden from the Spokesman Review.
I think there's two folks speaking over each other. Why don't we start, I heard the spokesman review. Why don't we start there, then go to the other questioner?
Yeah, this is Jim Camden from the Spokesman Review. I'm just wondering, will this suit, do you expect it to be handled before the suits that have been filed by the cities, or will it come after that?
This is Bill Sherman again from the AG's office. The city's suits were filed as long as a year ago. Our suit is obviously was filed just this afternoon. So many of the city suits have already been the subject of motions on behalf of Monsanto to dismiss or narrow those claims. And so the pace will move differently. We're going to be in King County Superior Court, they're in Federal District Court, and so they will be moving on parallel tracks. It's difficult to say which of those cases will be moving faster than the other, but we're getting started today.
Bill, what were those two firms again, please?
Barron and Budd.
Where are they at?
I'm sorry, the question for those on the phone was, what were the names of the law firms? And those will also be available on the complaint that you'll have a copy of.
The press release as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Barron and Budd and the Gomez law firm are the two law firms, and those firms have also represented each of the cities that I mentioned before, with the exception of the Port of San Diego, is represented by other counsel.
Thanks.
And there was someone else, I think, who was asking a question a moment ago as well.
Yeah, Jeff Bozela with Como Radio. If the production of these substances, PCBs, been banned in 1979, with international treaties on all of this, why is the lawsuit being filed now?
Maybe you want to repeat it for everybody as well.
So the question on the phone was if PCBs were banned by Congress as of 1979, why are we filing now? Well, the federal government and the states have been doing many things over the decades related to PCB contamination, everything from funding cleanup to doing studies. And there's a certain point when you need to look at the harm that is pervasive and persistent and say, enough is enough. It's time for Monsanto to pay their fair share. The fact is that PCBs don't degrade very easily at all. They are very persistent in the atmosphere. And so despite the fact that they have been made decades ago, they're still causing just as much harm today as they were in 1979. That harm continues and will continue until they're cleaned up. And so it's time for us to act now.
So we'll go to a quick question.
Monetary total of damages that you're looking for at the moment, though?
So the question for the folks in the room went to what's the monetary damages that we'd be seeking. We're not able to put a specific figure on at this time for obvious reasons. We're just at the onset of litigation, but I think it's fair to say to give you a sense of what we'll be seeking, it'd be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more. Let me go to, I think we have another question here in the room here. Go right ahead.
That was my question.
Okay,
Just,
great.
You know, in general terms, what are you looking for specifically? Is each one a different, like the trespassing charge? Is there a certain amount of monetary you're looking for on each charge per se, or is it big?
That's in total. When I give you a figure of hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, we're speaking about the totality of our claims together. Any other questions in the room here?
Is this the first conversation you've had? Have there been discussions before the suit was filed? Were there attempts to?
With Monsanto?
With Monsanto to kind of say, hey, you know, heads up, is there something, you know, what kind of correction can be done? Basically, is this the last attempt? Is this the last resort?
So the question goes to, this is Bob Ferguson speaking, the question goes to, Have there been communications with Monsanto? Would there be conversations moving forward with Monsanto now that this has been filed? So Bill Sherman attempted to reach out to Monsanto earlier today to give them a heads up and left a message. But no, it's not. There's not been some lengthy discussions prior to this. I think Monsanto's made their position clear in other litigation from the cities of what their position is. And I think by taking this action today, we are making equally clear on what our position is as well. That said, in any litigation, obviously there are conversations that take place, right? And as leading this office, that's something we are always open to, of course. That said, I anticipate that Monsanto will defend itself vigorously, and I anticipate that we, as an office, will be prosecuting this case intensely.
What are the weaknesses that you've seen from your perspective in Monsanto's response to the city lawsuits?
You might repeat that to make sure I got that.
What are the weaknesses that you've seen, or I mean, what is it about the response that Monsanto has made to these city lawsuits that you think, or I guess maybe just can you characterize, or what do you think about the response that Monsanto has made to those lawsuits?
So the question goes to what do I make of the response from Monsanto to the city's litigation? I wasn't surprised by anything that I saw from Monsanto in response to the city's litigation. I mean, keep in mind, we are one state of 50. PCBs are pervasive across our country in the different states. When I say that we estimate that the damages in this case could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, you can do the math, right? If we are correct and are successful, that is a significant impact on Monsanto. You can do the math on 49 other states and the many other jurisdictions as well. So that is why I was not surprised by Monsanto's response. And look, they will have resources to fight this. That's okay. That's how the system works. But I'm confident in our case.
Bill, which of the city cases is furthest along, and has it reached a dispositive spot where there's actually been some sort of ruling from the bench in either summary judgment or partial summary judgment?
So the question was which of the city's cases is farthest along, or which of the city's cases has received some kind of a judgment on the merits. So all the city's cases are relatively new. Monsanto has filed motions to dismiss in all of them, I believe. The most pertinent ruling actually came in the city of Spokane's case in federal court in the Eastern District of Washington. And they moved to dismiss the case, period. And the judge in that case denied Monsanto's motion to dismiss and held that the city of Spokane had standing and that case could move forward. The judge's reasoning in that lawsuit is persuasive and it's helpful.
That was just a standing issue.
That was only a motion to dismiss. It was not a motion for summary judgment. Okay. So all these cases are at an early stage right now.
All right.
And I want to be respectful of the governor's time and appreciate him being here. Let's take one more question maybe from the phone, and then some of us are available afterwards for the folks in the room for additional questions. Is there anyone on the phone who has a final question for us? If not, I want to thank everybody for being here, especially Governor Inslee. As the governor and I both emphasized, Monsanto knew what they were doing. They knew. They concealed that information from the public. That's not right. You can't do that and expect not to be held accountable. And the harm to our state has been significant, to put it mildly. And that's why we have courts. That's why we have a judicial system. To take on a powerful interest, in this case a powerful corporation, who put profits ahead of people and ahead of our environment. What they did is not right. I want to emphasize that. And it's my job to make sure we hold them accountable. I think people in the state of Washington should feel as I do. I'm angry about what they did. The more I read about it, the angrier I get. And it's our job to go into court and to make this right. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll stick around for additional questions if you have them. Thanks so much, everybody.